Go live. And I said ready to go live, and we are live right now. And
We
I
are
spoke with
live.
Raphael. Raphael, over to you. What are we doing today, and who
Over.
are we?
Who are we? I'm Raphael Bennett. This is my good friend Alesh Balsar. And did I pronounce your name correctly, Alesh? I'm
No,
not
no,
even
you're
sure how to
not.
say
But
your name. No, okay. Well, that shows you how good of friends we are. I don't know his name. Um, we're talking today about figuring out what we want out of life, how to figure out what you want out of life. And what I one of the things I want out of life is to know how to pronounce my friends' names correctly. So
oh,
maybe we can
Alesh
dig
is
into that.
correct. Alesh
Alesh
is
is
correct.
correct.
So that's important,
Okay.
and family name doesn't matter. And now hearing that I want a dog in my life, I'm jealous now.
Are
Go
you
ahead.
sure about that? This dog is interrupting our live feed here, our live stream, and there's nobody here to deal with it, Alesh. I have to just embrace the sounds, both welcome and unwelcome.
Not only you, but also the truckloads of the viewers of our stream.
Our truckloads of viewers, I'm sure. Tonka truck, those little toy trucks. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this topic today because I feel like I'm always asking myself that question of what do I want, and I think that changes. You know, sometimes we think we want one thing, and we start to pursue that, and we find out, oh, this is not what I expected it to be, or this is hard, or this is not the experience that I imagined. Um, and I think that's totally fine. It's sometimes it's a good signal to pivot, and sometimes it's just the reality of things. We see the kind of the glamour or the positive aspect of something that we desire, and we don't think about everything that comes along with that. We see other people's successes, and we don't see the behind the scenes, the work and the sacrifice that went into getting to that place. So we want the result, but we don't want the effort, we don't want the work. So maybe we can dig into that a little bit today.
Very true. I like what you said, and not only that, not only we want the result. What I wanted for the longest possible time, and I still crave that, is having it resolved once and for all. So as you said,
Yeah.
sometimes we need to pivot. I'm like, no, I want to have this result. Get things done and dusted, and move to the next thing. And it's tricky to do when the thing is live, because what's the next thing? But that's too deep, maybe.
Maybe or maybe not. So what? But what would that mean to have it all done? Would that mean arriving at a place where there are no longer problems to be solved, and you can just kind of kick your feet up and go, cool, I'm going to enjoy this? I mean, it seems to me like that would get boring pretty quickly. And
I believe so.
we don't need to work towards retirement to get that. I mean, you can see people in every town that are living that semi-retired life. Yeah. So how do we sort that out? How do we figure out what it is that we're after? I think it takes a little bit of digging. Yeah.
I believe so. So what I suggest we do, I would like to open it up a little bit with what we tried so far, and what is working. I am very curious about some of your experience on that, and then maybe we see where is the less concrete area where we don't really know and we may never know. And I'd like to say that. I did read a bunch of articles saying, yeah, you need to figure out what you want from your life. People who have 5-year plan, 15-year plan, 100-year plan are more successful in your life. There's scientific evidence. My mom told me so since I was a little boy, because that's what parents do, right? You need to figure out what you want to do with your life, otherwise you end up as whatever. And I really thought that it's linear. So the pivoting was not my plan. And what I did is I finished high school. I really wanted to do back then political science. I majored in political science, and I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to study this. I'm going to teach that. But one thing is, I never was really good at this, and the second thing was I realized that my interests are kind of leaning towards the teaching part of it rather than the political science part. So, and now I ended up in learning and development team. And here's the thing: I understand that the phrase "ended up" itself is misleading, because I don't know what's going to happen. And if you ask me 10 years ago where I'm going to be right now, it would be a different answer. So I'm more careful around this question. I am more accepting in terms of that, in terms of this changing nature of life. And I'm also, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing more how much we need to weave into our consideration also the stages in life. Speaking of which, you probably are leading a different life with all those, happy noises of your family and pets than you did as a teenager. So something you consider to be desirable back then might not be the case now, and it may not be the case 10 years from now. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you identify as those noises being happy noises. Sometimes they feel that way, not always. It's easy to think of, we think about what we want out of life, and we think about things like, our career choice, the type of, car we want to drive, or like our financial status and things like that. But I think it's helpful to kind of narrow it down and go like, what do you want your weeks to look like? What do you want your day to look like? Because then that can help answer some of the bigger questions. Often we want, we want a high paying job, and we want a big house, and we want all that, like what comes along with that. And there are plenty of people that attain those things and are pretty miserable. And there are a lot of people that live very simple lives and are very fulfilled. You mentioned the data for people that have 5-year plans and 10-year plans being more successful. I'm very interested in how they define success in those studies, right? What does that mean? Does that mean that they are successful in their chosen career path? Like, that maybe they're whatever it is. Are they fulfilled? So I'm more interested in that. Are people feeling like they're living a life that's fulfilling to them? Like are they leaving things untapped? Are there things that they're dreaming of doing, that don't seem like possibilities to them? I mean, we all will have that, and I think that's natural. But the point is that we can be successful by a lot of definitions and still not be living the type of life that we want to live. And that's why I think that question is important, of defining what success means to yourself, and figuring out, what kind of lifestyle do you want? What do you want your days to be like? Feel like I'm getting closer and closer to that myself, and maybe I can just define a little bit of what's important to me right now in my life. So health is very important to me. I'm committed to my physical health. So that means making space in my weeks for the different types of training that I like to do. Sometimes that comes at the expense of other things in my life. For instance, sometimes it can take priority over family matters, and that can leave some people a little bit frustrated with me. And so there's still a dance of trying to fit all these things into life. So when I think of what I want out of life, I want the space and the capacity to pursue these things that I want, to be able to provide for my family, to be able to take care of myself, and to show up and have a robust social life, which is probably one area that I've been neglecting for the last few years, and I'm making a little bit more of an effort these days to give a little bit more attention and time to that. So, when I think about those things, they kind of encompass a lot of areas of my life. And sometimes it feels like things are going really smoothly, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going somewhat according to plan, and things are good. And sometimes it feels like everything is on the verge of cracking down, you know, like one bad conversation and you start to realize the fragility of some of the relationships in your life, or, you know, the other things in your life. So I think for me, what I want is changing. And I like to ask myself that question regularly. And also this kind of acceptance of where things are now, because this is what we have. This is our life. This is our experience. And if we're constantly living for something that's way beyond us, out of reach, then we're not really here to enjoy what we have and what we're living now. So I think it's possible to, once we get clear on the type of person we want to be, the type of life we want to have, I think it's possible to start living that way, regardless of the life circumstance that we find ourselves in. Now, you may hate your job, and it may be a wise thing to try to find another one, or to do something else with yourself. That doesn't mean you have to wait until that happens to start living your life the way that you want to live, right?
Yeah, I think it very much depends on if we think about these short time increments, as you said. So living in the present. So how do I craft my day? How do I craft, you know, this moment? How do I live there versus these longer increments? What you asked, I think quite rightfully so, was, you know, the people who achieve their goals due to planning, you know, what does that even mean? You know, that they are more successful. We can say they are more successful in achieving the goals they set for themselves, but to your point, it's a totally different question to ask whether or not their goals are meaningful to them, and whether they will have been meaningful once accomplished. Because you know, it's very easy to end up chasing the goals that you realize were irrelevant once you achieve them.
Yes. We all know the classic kind of you know, very career-oriented person that sacrifices a lot of their family time, which you only have once, right? Your kids grow up once and then it's done. You can't take that time back. So those are questions that are important to answer. Like, what do we value? You know, how much time is important to us to spend with our family? How much time is important to, you know, leave open for social time and novel experiences, trips, things like that? Or do you appreciate your solo time? You know, do you want your own free time to write and read and exercise, whatever the case may be? And again, you know, that will likely change as you move throughout your life. And it can be as simple as like, what do you want today to look like? What do you want tomorrow to look like? And even breaking your days up. So if you have a crappy morning, you don't have to have a crappy rest of your day too. You can break, I like to sometimes break my day into quarters and think like, okay, like if I kind of wasted some time in the morning, I have an opportunity to like get back up and tighten things up a little bit and create the experience that I want. For me, that often involves like training, and I've found that scheduling that kind of thing makes it a lot more likely to happen for me. Yeah, so it can really be as simple as that. We don't have to figure out, what do I want out of my entire life? What do I want 5 years from now? What do I want 10 years from now? What do you want today? What would you like today to look like? What would make, you know, what would a good day look like? Going to bed this evening, if you were going to reflect on your day, what would make you feel really good and go, wow, I'm going to sleep a little better tonight because I feel like I knocked out a few things that were really kind of itching at me? Or, you know, what things are you going to go to bed with wishing you had tackled today? So, you know, those are good questions to ask yourself. We don't have to have some grand plan figured out, you know. In fact, I would argue that if we think we have things figured out, we're in for like often a pretty rude awakening. Like we think we've got it all, you know, figured out, and then bam, things change, things shift.
Yeah. No, it's sounds very relatable to me, and it's often the planning we do is often actually focusing on the wrong thing. So we are paying attention to the wrong signals. I'm gonna butcher it horribly, but there was this quote. I'm gonna attribute it to Dalai Lama, because if you attribute a quote to Dalai Lama, it's a good one by definition. and he was puzzled, saying like people are weird because they trade their health to get more money, and once they get the money destroying their health, they are trying to buy the health back with the money rather than using them for anything else. So it's that kind of appeared in my mind. And also when you mentioned the day divided into segments or quarters, I realized I'm often kind of trading, and I think most of us do, at least sometimes. I'm trading the morning, sleeping in, and I'm trading my comfortable morning for the discomfort and sometimes self-loathing in the afternoon for not delivering. And my question for you, Raphael, is I see you as for the most part very tranquil, well balanced in these areas. Would you say that everything is a trade-off? Would you say that whatever choice you make, you are trading in something? And if it is that bugging you? Is it this constant sense of, FOMO of some sort?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, we can only really give ourselves to one thing at a time, right? Like fully. So of course there's some trade-off, you're not going to go for a run and eat breakfast at the same time. So you've got to make your choice, and you've only got so many minutes and hours in a day. I love this idea of, I forget which article it was, but there was an article essentially breaking the day into 10-minute chunks. And for the average person, the amount of waking hours that we have in our day, so if you take like 8 hours for sleep, we have 100 10-minute chunks in the day to work with. Did I lose you, Alesh? There you are. I think
110-minute chunks. Okay.
110-minute chunks. So if you break your day into those 10-minute chunks, you start to think, wow, like what can I do in 10 minutes? I spent 10 minutes this morning with my coffee doing language learning, French lessons on Duolingo. That's it. So if I have 100 of those, that means I only used 1% of my 10-minute chunks. And I got this habit in the books, that one's clocked in for today. I don't have to worry about it later. I used 3 of those 10-minute chunks to do a rowing training session. So that's only 4% of my 10-minute chunks. And I managed to knock out 2 very important habits for myself. And the reason why I mentioned those habits, we've been doing a lot of work with different coaches. There's a lot of talk of transformation, right? And I like to ask, like, how do you know if transformation is happening? Like, how can you look back from, 6 months ago and go, am I growing in the direction that I want to? So for me, I think a good indicator is like, how are we using our time? Like, what are your habits? Are your habits any different than they are 6 months ago? Are the ones that you wanted to take on, are you taking any of those on? Are you able to kind of, move away from some of the ones that you are craving to move away from? So to answer your question about the trade-off, sure, there's going to be a trade-off. I am having to make sacrifices in order to dedicate the type of time that I want for myself, for the various trainings and physical practices that I am committed to taking on. That often comes at the expense of doing other things that maybe my partner wants me to do. And so I'm still figuring out how to show up in all those places as well, while also keeping time for me. And of course, as you know, I'm working on developing a coaching practice, and I run a licensed cannabis farm, and I have 11-year-old twin children, and I have animals to care for. And, we like to do all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, there's a trade-off. You can't do it all. And that's where I think And I know you're like structures and planning are kind of within the realm of the language that you speak. So I'm learning very much that I need these structures in place. If I just kind of wing it and hope that all these things are going to happen throughout the week, they are not going to happen, Alesh. They're not going to happen. I have to say this happens on this day at this time. Now, sometimes that day and time comes and something else comes up and I have to adjust. So it is a trade-off, you know? For instance, last Thursday, we were invited kind of short notice to a gathering at our neighbor's place. And I was in the middle of a training session. I finally got warmed up and I was like, okay, I can either decline this invitation, but my partner and I were committed to showing up more fully in our social life and beginning to be more open to the invitations that we'd been kind of closed off to, as a lot of people were for the last, year. We've been in this pandemic and it's made a lot of sense. And it was a great excuse for me to kind of stay home. But now I'm ready to, open up a little bit. So yeah, there's always going to be some trade-off. But you have to ask yourself, what's important to you? And if it's important enough, you kind of get that going. And with momentum, we're able to keep some of these things. We have a comment from Yanka, but the big plan gives me the power to get through. Absolutely. Absolutely. Burn that goal into your mind. If you have a vision, something that you're working to, that can be your fuel, your inspiration during those times, because the day-to-day often isn't that satisfying. Sometimes doing the one task doesn't give us that instant reward or gratification that we're looking for. We have to remember why we're doing that one thing. It's an investment in the long term, the long plan, right? So absolutely, the plan helps. That being said, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like it's good to have a plan. But I've heard it said that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our training. And that's where it comes back down to the habits. You can have all the goals, but if you look back on your week and you're not creating the habits that are going to get you there, what is going to get you there?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, especially for the small increments, the habits are critical, especially because we have overwhelming scientific evidence now that most of the activities you do during the day happens on autopilot. And of course, you can steer a little bit, but once you institute a habit, 99 point, I don't know how much percent this is going to be what you're going to be doing from there on. So, right. And I'll see. I have some issues in there. Go ahead.
The habits will form whether we want them to or not, right? So we can we can steer what kind of habits do we want to form. What is important to us to be included in our life, and what would we be better off leaving behind? I've been consciously working lately on tightening up my time management. What that translates to for me is like less time wasted. So less time bullshitting on YouTube or other online activities. And if I am going to do that, if I'm going to spend some time on YouTube, I'll do it consciously and go, okay, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to, I've got some videos in my watch later that I've been really wanting to catch up on. I'm going to do that. Rather than feeling like, okay, I was planning on doing this other thing, but let me just do this, and then find myself suddenly, sucked in, and next thing you know, an hour passes and you're not doing the thing that you were committed to doing. And I think we may have lost Alesh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You're back.
Very good. Oh, that was one weird minute. So I'm having actually tech issues since this morning, since my Q1 of the day. Or for you, this is your Q1. For me, this is the Q4, and we managed to spoke yesterday, and I mentioned that this. I always feel a bit jealous when I talk to you, because it's your morning, it's my afternoon, and it's always a little. It's a little hard for me, because I feel like the day is about to be over. So how is it? How is it for you? How do you deal with situation when the day kind of unravels from the start to the end? You said you can always kind of pause and get back on the horse. I find it very, very difficult for myself, and especially when there's a stressful event, I feel like, yeah, my day is ruined. I'm willing to try again, but I'm going to try tomorrow. What's your strategy there?
Meditation. If my day has escaped me and I haven't used it the way I'd like to. Often now, it also depends on what kind of movement I've had that day. If I haven't had any movement, I like to incorporate some movement into my evening, depending what time of day it is. If it's early evening, I might do like a very vigorous yoga routine, or I might go for a hike, followed by like a 10-minute guided meditation or 20-minute guided meditation. And I feel like this helps me cap my day in a way that sets me up for a better morning. Like, okay, I accept that I've, wasted some time that day. Maybe things didn't go as planned, but that's water under the bridge now. I can sit and loathe. I can continue that pattern, right? Or I can say, okay, I can stop now, and I can be with that. And maybe it's not easy. If we have these habits of staying up on our phone in bed, then that's a hard thing to break, but it's not complicated. It is simple. It's simple to put your phone on airplane mode and read a book. That's not, and so I've gotten to the point where I actually look forward to that, and I've found that the more I tighten up my evening routine, the smoother my mornings are. And so I like to, if nothing else, like let's say you're the whole bulk of your day, let's say quarter, 2 and 3 suck. And even the beginning, the second half of 1 and whatever, can you bookend your day with something decent that's good for you? So I often like to start my day strong and like to finish my day strong. And honestly, Alesh, these days, like things are pretty busy. So the amount of time I have at my disposal to waste is less than it used to be, which I found for me makes it much easier to stay on track. But that's because I have things lined up for me to do. If I had nothing planned, it would be very easy, especially these days. This thing right here is like, it's too easy. It's too easy to pick this up and waste a bunch of time. Now, there are still a lot of areas that I think need a little bit of improvement and need a little bit more attention. We spoke yesterday. We're in a common group together with our coach, Adam Quiney, and we discussed the various challenges that we're going through right now. And, one of the ones for me is creating the time and space to build this coaching practice. And when there are so many other things in my life that are kind of vying for my attention. And so I feel, for me, it makes it even more important. And I feel like it gives me more to relate with people on. I'm a busy parent. Health and fitness are important to me. I run a business. These are things that I can, connect with people on. So not excuses, but it does make it more challenging to take on even more beyond our capacity. I see we have another comment here. Do you feel too constrained, or that everything is too predictable, boring? I don't. I don't feel that at all. For me, I feel like life is kind of exciting, but I'm really glad, Janka, that you brought that up, because before our call today, I was thinking about mentioning the importance of novel experiences, keeping things fresh, doing things that are unplanned and spontaneous. I don't have as much a room in my life for that as I might like. There is a certain level of predictability. I have kids, they need to be at the bus stop at the same time, 4 days a week, and then pick them up at the same time. And I have to get them in bed so I have to kind of create the novelty, right? So we might do something different on the weekend. Like this last weekend, we went stand-up paddleboarding. I bought my fiance a stand-up paddleboard for her birthday. It was the first time for myself and my kids trying it out. And it was a lot of fun. So that was, you create those experiences however you can. And I think that that's incredibly important. I think that having too constrained of a life, and again, this totally varies from person to person. If you're someone whose life is entirely too free and you don't have any structure and you're struggling as a result of that, then you might benefit from constraining a little bit and creating a little bit more structure. That was the case for myself. I had too much freedom. I've been self-employed for many, many years, haven't had anyone else to answer to. And when you make your own schedules and you don't have anyone to answer to, it can be really easy to get sloppy with your time. Nobody's gonna get you in trouble. Nobody's gonna write you up. Nobody's gonna fire you. So I've had to create that structure. And for me, I'm still feeling like more structure is good. But to Janka's question, absolutely, it can get boring and monotonous if you don't have some novel experiences. So structure those into your life as well. If that means hopping in the car and driving without a destination, that kind of thing. Please continue, Alesh.
No. It's you're absolutely right. I was just gonna to your point. You don't want to have freedom and chaos everywhere. Like spontaneity, of course, has its place, but imagine that your computer interface would change every morning. You would have a sense of novelty, but no, I want that to be boring. I want the power button to be on the same place every time I'm trying to switch the computer. Yeah. And or if the bus stop, that was a question that our philosophy teacher challenged us. So imagine that to get yourself out of the ordinary, the bus stop would be in a different place every morning. You would have to find it first to be able to take the bus. So I think we can kind of bring a little bit of consciousness into where we structures and where we allow ourselves to be spontaneous. Like a few examples for me. Like I'm not into food so much. I'm not into I don't require too much variety when it comes to my diet, and I see it as an advantage. There are articles arguing actually that most of us, even if we think we crave variety, we have some staple foods and we rotate them over and over anyway. Mm-hmm. And due to this constraint, this boredom in this area of my life, I have more time and mental capacity to spend on other things, because I don't need to figure out, what am I going to have for dinner? It's not a question I would ask myself, So it's coming back to the topic that it always is kind of a trade-off, I guess.
Yeah. And so, okay, you save time, and then how are you using that time windfall? So you've got your 3 carrots.
Just when I was hoping and your cucumber.
I'm not going to let you off the hook, Alesh. Yeah. You've got the extra time. You're decluttered. I'm looking at your place. There's nothing left to clean. Everything's gone. You've got a sofa, a bicycle, and a whiteboard. You've changed your door. Yeah. So you've saved a lot of time.
Oh, you wish. I'm kind of knee deep in clutter now. It's just
it's all on the other side of the camera
friendly angle. So yeah, but it's true that often this is not always easy to answer, right? People ask me that. So not to evade this question, I am asking myself what is worth my time. What do I really want to
Hmm.
do?
Hmm.
And do I wanna? Do I think I'm gonna feel regret in case I'm not gonna follow the fashion trends, for example? Well, not really. That's something I can live without. With the food, I'm looking back like, did I have regrets for not trying this and that? And I don't have regrets in these areas, but I have regrets in other areas. Like, I haven't written a book. I haven't, created some material, some content that we're doing together right now. So where do I really see the value for myself? And I'm actually use this moment to offer a couple of tools that help me to figure it out. So most of them are fairly common. I'm just going to post it in the comments for a few of us who might look into that. One of it was Wheel of Life. I'll just put a link in the comments. It's basically you outline what are the key roles in your life, and you are trying to kind of decide for yourself how do you want to show up in those roles. And when I define the key roles for myself, creator is one of my key roles. I want to do that. I want to be an educator. I want to be coming up with new stuff. A fashion model or a foodie, it's just not too high on my list. So I'm spending my time on the roles that are more important to me. Ha, Raphael, I feel like I handled your question honestly and almost with some dignity in there. What do you say?
I think there was a lot of dignity in there. You mentioned wanting to write a book, and so that's a good example. So if you know you want to write a book, that means that you need to write every day, right? And so that's a habit that you need to create if you hope to one day write a book. Um, Fashion model, foodie, I get it. I don't call myself a foodie, but I do enjoy a good meal myself. No dreams of being a fashion model in this lifetime, though. I will say that we share that. You mentioned recently potentially going on vacation, and I'm wondering if you've put any thought into that. And if you don't go, will that be something? Do you think you'll regret not having taken that vacation? Is that something that's important to you? Is that an example of something that, if you say no to that invitation, do you think you'll regret it?
It's thank you for this. It's a very uh, it's still a decision that's haunting me, and I'll try to again do it honestly and with some dignity, so it also helps our viewers. So uh, number one question for me is the lens of regrets really the most productive one? And that's something we probably will tackle with Raphael later on. Like, should you look at things as regrets or potential regrets? I did use this lens for our current discussion today, and I'm gonna keep using it now. But it might not be the best one for any situation. Having said that, Raphael, what you're asking me, I am guilty of doing this many times in my life. I did it in my relationship in the past. I was doing it all the time, like fooling myself into saying I don't have time to go on vacation. I don't have time to go out with friends. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this time to work. So I'm gonna stay behind. Everyone else is gonna go away. I'm gonna have this tranquility to accomplish something, and reliably, then I stay home and I don't accomplish anything. I'm just there, dusting shelves, which is what was
Hmm.
able to do, what we were able to do in the 80s back then before Netflix times. Now I do all sorts of stuff, but I do have regrets, and the regrets are mostly connected to the stuff I was hoping I will accomplish for meaningful work. And I didn't. So I was like, I robbed myself of the opportunity to relax, and I didn't accomplish. And this is a common pattern in my life for decades now.
I think this is a common pattern in a lot of people's lives. So let me just recap to see if I understand this correctly. So there are things in your life that you'd like to be doing, writing, creating, doing this type of important work. And there's an idea in your mind that going on vacation, you'd be abandoning this. So this gives you a reason to say, you know, vacation sounds nice, but I think I'll stay behind and I'll do all this work that I've been intending on doing. Then the time for the vacation passes, still haven't done the work. So that's kind of what I meant. Not regret. Regret can be kind of a useless thing, but it can also be helpful in helping steer our behaviors and make them more aligned with what we want to do in the future. So that was the question. You know, it's perfectly reasonable to say, I think I'll skip the trip and I'm going to work on this. At the same time, if you look at the other parts of your life, like will this trip help nurture the relationship that I'm in? Will it help me step away from the things I'm doing in life now and maybe be able to come back a little bit more refreshed with a little bit more clarity, a little shift in perspective? You know, historically, going to foreign countries and, you know, spending some time with different people has been a wonderful way to kind of get some fresh perspective on our current situation, and return to that. So it can actually be really productive to step away. That's why I'm asking. And I'm subtly trying to nudge you to take the trip because I sense that it would be positive.
See, it's just I'll get back to that definitely. What I wanted to share with our viewers is another thing that came to my mind when it comes to regrets. It's not a topic of regrets, but there's a concept called fear setting that Tim Ferriss is using. I just shared the link with our audience, and it's fairly similar. So the question is, what will happen if I don't do it by then? You know, whom am I letting down? And it could be a person, or it could be the goal or aspiration he set for himself. So
Yes.
if you're not familiar with that, I suggest to look it up as well. I know Raphael is probably using this method, or did use it in the past.
Yes, I have. I love this thing that Tim Ferriss does, this idea of writing down and defining the potential downsides to doing or not doing something. I think it's a very productive, way to think about things rather than just looking at the goal. Like, what will happen if I don't? You know, what are the potential downsides, upsides? So great. Yeah. So did you do this project for your current, I don't want to call it a predicament, but it's a decision, right? Like how you'll spend that time.
I didn't, and to be fair, I feel lately it's that I am not spending enough time on contemplation. You know, looking back at where I am and where I should be. So the wheel of life I shared. That's something I did feel for myself. It took me a couple of weeks looking at it, putting it together, putting my key roles. I also used the Ikigai model, which is like a similar tool, trying to find what's your niche, what do you want to do, what you are good at. I'm gonna put the link in here as well. And what I've learned worked for me the best is to review my creations, review my plans or role lists from the past, and I committed to do that on quarterly basis, to really have a look at it and see if it still applies. However, I'm not doing it, so I'm already overdue. Now I should be doing that, and I feel trapped in this sense of execution mindset, where I need to do stuff. And the spaciousness of reflecting and really asking myself those questions It's just not coming up easily to my mind.
Yeah. So
How do you? Okay, go ahead.
go ahead. No, please ask your question.
No, I'm just wondering, when things are busy, when things go off track, when you feel that this is not going as you wish it was. I know you mentioned meditation. Is there something else you would do, or is there a recollection of the situation from the past when you were able to kind of pull yourself from those problems, or is it sometimes better to just wait it out? What would you say?
Well, I think it depends on the circumstance. Oftentimes this is a subjective thing, right? Like we feel things aren't working out. There's some narrative, there's a story that we're telling ourselves about how today things are looking very gloomy. Might be different yesterday and it might be different tomorrow. So I like to remove myself from others in times like that. For instance, yesterday there was a little bit of friction between my spouse and I, and I saw myself becoming angry, and so I chose to take a walk, to take like a long, brisk walk, and just remove myself from the situation completely. I've been working with taking real responsibility for my own shit. So where in the past I might have this story about how it's all the other person's fault and how they have made me angry. If only they change their behavior, then I'd be doing fine, and that we wouldn't even have this problem. And I view things totally differently now. They're responsible for their behavior. I'm responsible for my reaction, for my response. And that's a very different thing, right? Reaction is like a knee jerk, like, oh, they said something and then I reacted in this way. So if I sense that, I try to clean it up as quickly as possible. If it's clear to me that an apology is necessary, that would come immediately if I can muster it up. And if I can't, I'll remove myself completely. And so sometimes just taking space and changing scenery. So if you've been in this loop and you've got this story going on in your head about how things are, how they should be, and you've been in your same apartment, house, job, desk, office, whatever, take it somewhere else. Change the scenery completely. Change the context. For me, physical training, something intense, breaking a sweat, doesn't even have to be for very long, but at least 20 minutes. That seems to be the magic. And there's data to support this, something like 21 minutes of intense exercise. I challenge you to try that and see if you don't process the same information that you had in a different way. Same information, nothing's changed. You haven't gotten any new information, but you've taken yourself into a new environment. You've moved your body in a different way. And now you can come back to the issue and see if you don't see it with a completely fresh perspective. That's what I've found to be incredibly effective.
And it's a very, very fitting reminder that I need to do this much more. So, you mentioned the bike. I finally did, after a long time. I biked a little bit more, and of course, it is a fresh outlook indeed. It's just very, very. It's kind of surprising what we do to ourselves, and I do it more often than I would like to. How easily we forget, how easily we forget these things work. And also, as you said earlier, many of those practices, they are simple, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always easy. That's the one example. One example I remember. It was from a book that Raphael, you may be able to quote actually where it was, but there was someone talking about quitting smoking, and the author said, well, quitting smoking is easy. Just don't put any cigarettes in your mouth ever, and you will quit smoking. It's as simple as that. Does it make it easy? Uh,
Yeah. I think in those cases, replacing one thing with another thing, if you're clear that that trigger is going to happen, and then the trigger is going to be followed with a craving, and then the craving is going to be followed with an action, which is the bad habit. In this case, let's say smoking. It's very useful to have a plan of like, what will I do when this thing comes up? If you're just like, yeah, not going to smoke. Okay. When that same trigger happens, how are you going to react to that? Were you ever a smoker, Alesh?
I was very lucky when it comes to smoking, actually. So I did smoke as part of kind of social expectation with my peer group in my early 20s. But unlike the sugar and sweets I mentioned to be my kryptonite, I never really enjoyed it much. So once I kind of got away from this group of smokers, I just stopped. But yeah, sugar I consume by myself, on public and in secret. So that's my drug of choice, or not really that much of a choice.
Not that much of a choice. There's a nice little spin at the end there. I was a smoker myself for quite a while. I was able to quit and then stupidly begun again. And part of that was the arrogance of knowing that I could quit. So yes, I was able to successfully quit smoking several times throughout my life for spans of years. So I was the type of person that could quit cold turkey and go months or years without having a cigarette, and then like consciously decide to start smoking again. And now I've been cigarette free for about 8 years or so, and I can very confidently say that I will not be taking up smoking again anytime in this lifetime. Not cigarettes anyway. Cannabis is another story. Although I mostly eat it these days, I find that to be a preferred method of consumption for myself. And mind you, I am in California, so this is a legal state. So for those of you out there, I am not encouraging you to break the law in any way.
No, I see what you're doing, Raphael. Trying to bump up our numbers of viewers for the next one, because
I
suddenly.
Hope so.
Well, it's before we close today, I'm just wondering, and this is related to the planning and to what kind of life we wanna live, and kind of casting it. You mentioned the repeated venues into smoking and then quitting. Would you say, and I'm so slow because I'm asking myself, would you say there are things that is better not to try? There are things that contemplate on and say, no, I'm not experimenting with that. And I'm not talking about substances. I'm talking about, the notion of, oh, it's one life, I should try everything, and then decide, versus some of these things I can just look at and deliberate on and not to go there ever. For many people, I guess smoking would be one of those, but it could be anything, I guess.
Well, I think for something like cigarettes, the answer is a clear no. We have enough information now. We know how horrible it is for you. So I see no reason to try that. You only live once. I mean, where does that end? That doesn't mean that, there are risky behaviors that I suppose are worth trying. There are a lot of people that do like extreme sports and things like that. It's not really my jam, but hey, who's to say? You have these guys, I forget the guy's name, but this guy that's like free slacklining, God knows where. I think it was in Yosemite somewhere, thousands of feet above the ground with absolutely no safety line. He's just, like just seeing that makes me freak. But this man is obviously passionate. And I think to myself, like, even if he did plummet to his death doing that, and I hope he does not, like, that's not the worst way to go. So if you're chasing a thrill and that's that's your medicine, hey, more power to you. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. Although in the times of COVID restrictions and green screens, how do you know it was real? Who knows
That's a
if this
good
awesome
question,
couch is
Alesh.
actually real?
It's
Maybe.
nonsense. Well, I think if the couch was fake, it would have changed the upholstery each time a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I think, and if it's not real, can you add a coffee table next time and see how that goes?
Let's see.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of brought us back around to novel experiences and the importance of that. So back to what Yanka was saying, being too predictable, too boring. I'm certainly not advocating for that, especially as someone who used to get bored quite frequently. And I'm not saying I never get bored now. I feel I have a lot of things to do, so I don't find myself being bored very often. But I do require more engagement to stay stimulated. So often in some of the group calls that you and I have been on, Alesh, I can find myself kind of drifting or, wanting to just get to the point already kind of place. And a lot of the time I'm able to catch that and kind of refocus and often there's something to be learned because often what's happening is I'm actually not paying attention at all. I'm coming up with a reason why this is not important to listen to, and I could be missing out on something potentially powerful. So I got a little bit derailed there, but I think it was loosely on topic.
Sorry, what was that? I wasn't listening.
Perfect.
No, it's. I think it's pretty cool. Also, what you said earlier, in one of our previous talks when we talked about doing the dishes. So the approaching activities, even mundane, with curiosity may actually bring the novelty in your life without really changing what you're doing, and it's this childlike wonder that could be present in whatever you do. That might be the way to go.
That is a fantastic way to wrap up our conversation today, Alesh. What can you bring that's fresh, that creates a new experience for yourself in the same things that you've been doing? I could certainly ask that of myself, and I think that there's a lot to tap into there. There's a lot that we could be picking up on if we approach things with a beginner's mind, with a fresh set of eyes. Go into your next meeting thinking like, how have I been showing up to this, and how can I show up in a new way today? How can I really listen and really try to understand what people are saying? And you might find a completely fresh way to contribute as well. Great point.
Love it. And I'm noting it down for our next call. It's going to be our topic. It's brilliant. Okay.
Fantastic.
Done and dusted, right on time. So, Raphael, thank you again for that. Thank you for being here with me and with our 1.5 viewer. And I'll let you open the call. I'm going to let you close the call as well. You do it. I'll shut up and just click the button.
Well, thank you to our 1.5 viewers or whoever ends up watching this. Wishing you a beautiful day, evening, wherever you may be. I hope you join us again. And as usual, if you have a topic that you would like to see us discuss, please do share in the comments, and we'd be happy to do so. Thanks for watching.